Dr. Katherine "Cat" Sullivan pushed her cleaning cart down the pristine hallways of NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, the squeak of the wheels echoing off the walls at 5:47 a.m. At 72 years old, she'd been doing this exact job for 40 years, arriving before sunrise, cleaning offices and laboratories before the engineers and scientists arrived, invisible as air to the brilliant minds who walked past her daily. She wore the same navy blue custodial uniform she'd worn for 4 decades, her gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, her hands weathered from years of mopping and scrubbing. To everyone at NASA, she was just Kat, the sweet old cleaning lady who always had a kind word, who never complained, who kept the place spotless with quiet efficiency. Nobody knew that those same weather hands had once held a PhD in aerospace engineering from MIT. Nobody knew that Cat Sullivan had designed critical systems for the Space Shuttle program in the 1970s. Nobody knew that the woman pushing a mop had calculated trajectories that put men on the moon and brought them home safely. Nobody knew, because Kat had made sure of it. Her story began 50 years ago, in 1974, when Katherine Sullivan was a 22-year-old prodigy fresh out of MIT with a doctorate in aerospace engineering and dreams of designing spacecraft. She'd been recruited by NASA with enthusiasm, one of the first women in the engineering division at a time when the space program was still very much a man's world. Young Katherine had been brilliant. Her designs for fuel efficiency systems had reduced costs by millions. Her calculations for orbital mechanics had been flawless. Her innovations in thermal protection had saved the shuttle program from potential disasters. She'd worked 18-hour days, sacrificed everything for the mission, and had been on track to become one of the youngest lead engineers in NASA history, until Dr. Richard Blackwood happened. Blackwood was her supervisor, a charismatic engineer 10 years her senior, who'd taken credit for her work systematically and deliberately. When Katherine designed a revolutionary heat shield system, Blackwood presented it as his own at a conference. When Katherine solved the critical propulsion problem, Blackwood's name went on the patent. When Katherine created the life support system that would keep astronauts alive on extended missions, Blackwood was promoted to division head on the strength of his innovation. Katherine had fought back. She'd gone to management, shown her original calculations, presented her notebooks with dated entries proving the work was hers. But this was 1975, and a young woman's word against a respected male engineer's carried little weight. Management had suggested she was confused about who'd done what work. They'd implied she was being emotional and difficult. They'd threatened her career if she continued to make unfounded accusations. So Katherine had made a choice. She could keep fighting and likely be forced out, her reputation destroyed, or she could disappear into the background and continue contributing in ways that mattered, even if nobody knew it was her. She'd chosen the latter, but not in the way anyone expected. Katherine had resigned from her engineering position, citing personal reasons. Management had been relieved. Blackwood had been triumphant. And Katherine had immediately reapplied to NASA for a different position entirely, custodial services. They'd hired her on the spot. A woman willing to clean floors at NASA for minimum wage? Perfect. They'd never looked at her background, never connected the dots that Dr. Katherine Sullivan and custodian Cat Sullivan were the same person. And for 40 years, Cat had swept floors, cleaned offices, and secretly continued designing spacecraft. She'd done it brilliantly. Working night shifts when the building was empty, she'd access computers using accounts she created decades ago that still existed in NASA's archaic security system. She'd leave calculations accidentally on engineers' desks, disguised as her own work. She'd whisper suggestions to young engineers, phrased as questions so they'd think the ideas were their own. She'd plant solutions in places where the right people would find them. Cat Sullivan had ghost design improvements to the International Space Station. She'd solved problems with the Mars rovers that engineers had been stuck on for months. She contributed to satellite designs, propulsion systems, and life support technologies. All of it anonymously. All of it invisible. Her greatest achievement, though, was the Artemis III lunar lander, the spacecraft that would return humans to the moon in 2025. She designed 70% of its critical systems over the past 5 years, carefully feeding her innovations into the project through carefully orchestrated accidents and discoveries. Nobody knew, and Kat had intended to keep it that way, taking her secret to grave, content with the knowledge that her work was helping humanity reach the stars, even if her name was never attached to it. But then everything changed on a Tuesday morning in November 2024. Kat was cleaning the engineering wing, as she did every morning, when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Through an open office door, she heard panicked voices discussing a critical flaw in the Artemis III lunar lander's fuel distribution system. "We launch in 3 months," a young engineer named Dr. Sarah Martinez was saying, stress evident in her voice. "If we can't solve this, the mission is scrubbed. Or worse, the astronauts could be stranded on the lunar surface with no way to launch back." "I've run the numbers 50 times," another engineer replied. "The fuel lines freeze at lunar night temperatures. We didn't account for the extended surface stay. The metal contracts at minus 280 degrees Fahrenheit. When they try to launch, the lines could rupture. Can we redesign?" Sarah asked desperately. "Not in 3 months. It would take a year just to run simulations, another 6 months to manufacture and test. The mission is dead." Kat stood frozen outside the door, her mop handle gripped tight. She knew exactly what the problem was. More than that, she knew exactly how to fix it. She'd anticipated this issue in her original designs 5 years ago and had created a solution, a composite material fuel line with thermal expansion properties that would function at extreme temperatures. But she'd never been able to introduce it because it would require access to the main design database, which she couldn't reach anonymously. If she spoke up now, she'd reveal herself. 40 years of invisibility destroyed. Her secret would be exposed, her methods questioned, possibly criminalized for unauthorized access to NASA systems. She could face legal consequences, public humiliation, the end of everything she'd carefully built. But if she stayed silent, the mission would fail. Or worse, astronauts might die. Kat made her decision in that moment. After 40 years of hiding, it was time to step into the light. She knocked on the open door. The engineers barely glanced up, seeing only the cleaning lady, an interruption to their crisis. "Excuse me," Kat said quietly. "I couldn't help overhearing your problem." Sarah looked up with barely concealed impatience. "I'm sorry. We're in the middle of something important. Can you come back later?" "I know how to fix your fuel line issue," Kat said. The engineers stared at her. Then Sarah smiled kindly, the way you smile at someone you think is confused. "That's very sweet, but this is a complex engineering problem. We appreciate your concern, but you need a composite material fuel line using a titanium aluminum matrix with embedded carbon nanotubes for thermal conductivity." Kat interrupted. "The expansion coefficient needs to be calibrated to match lunar temperature variations, and you'll need pressure sensors every 12 inches to monitor stress points. I can give you the exact specifications if you have a whiteboard." The room went completely silent. Sarah and the other engineer, whose name tag read Dr. James Park, were staring at Kat with expressions somewhere between shock and confusion. "How do you—" James began, then stopped. "Ma'am, are you an engineer?" "I was," Kat said simply. "A long time ago. May I use your whiteboard?" Still stunned, Sarah gestured to it. Kat set down her mop, walked to the board, picked up a marker, and began writing. Mathematical equations flowed from her hand with the ease of a native language. Calculations, measurements, material specifications, thermal properties, pressure tolerances. Her handwriting was neat and precise, the work of someone who'd done this thousands of times. The two engineers watched in growing amazement as this elderly custodian filled a whiteboard with aerospace engineering calculations that would have taken them days to work out. "The key," Kat explained as she wrote, is the carbon nanotube integration. They conduct heat at the molecular level, preventing the kind of localized freezing that causes rupture. The titanium-aluminum matrix provides structural integrity while maintaining the flexibility you need for expansion and contraction. You'll need to manufacture it in a zero-gravity environment, though. The molecular alignment is critical. She finished writing and stepped back. That should solve your problem. You want to run simulation, of course, but the math is sound. James had pulled out his phone and was frantically photographing the whiteboard. Sarah was scrolling through the equations on her tablet, cross-referencing with their existing data. Her eyes kept getting wider. This is brilliant, Sarah breathed. This solves everything. The thermal conductivity, the pressure tolerance, even the weight considerations. Who are you? Kat smiled sadly. My name is Dr. Katherine Sullivan. I have a Ph.D. in aerospace engineering from MIT. I worked for NASA from 1974 to 1975, and I've been working here as a custodian ever since. And I need to tell you something important. Most of the Artemis III lunar lander, I designed it. Not officially, but I designed it. The room went so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights humming. I'm sorry, what? James said faintly. Before Kat could answer, more footsteps approached. Dr. Michael Foster, the Artemis program director, appeared at the door. Sarah, James, I heard you found a solution to the fuel line issue. That's fantastic. How did you? He stopped mid-sentence, seeing Kat at the whiteboard covering equations. Kat, what are you doing here? Are you okay? I'm fine, Dr. Foster, Kat said. I was just helping these young engineers with a problem. Michael looked at the whiteboard, then at Kat, then back at the whiteboard. You wrote this? Yes. Kat, you're a custodian. How do you know aerospace engineering? Because I'm not just a custodian, Kat said, her voice steady. I'm also the person who designed most of the spacecraft you're about to launch. Michael laughed, thinking it was a joke. Then he saw Kat's expression. The laugh died. I'm sorry, what? Kat took a deep breath. Dr. Foster, I think you should call a meeting. There are some things I need to explain, and it's going to take a while. 2 hours later, Kat sat in a conference room surrounded by NASA's senior leadership, engineering teams, and legal counsel. On the screen behind her, she projected files from her personal computer, 40 years of secret work documented meticulously. She told them everything. The discrimination in 1975, the stolen credit, the deliberate decision to disappear and continue contributing anonymously, the ghost engineering she'd done for 4 decades, the system she designed, the problem she'd solved, the innovation she created while pushing a mop and cleaning toilets. She showed them her original notebooks from the 1970s, proving that ideas attributed to Richard Blackwood had been hers. She showed them her personal files, decades of work that matched perfectly with breakthroughs that various engineers had made over the years. She demonstrated how she'd accessed NASA systems using obsolete security protocols, how she planted her designs where they'd be found, how she'd ghost-written solutions to problems that had stumped teams of engineers. The room was silent except for the occasional gasp or muttered curse as people recognized their own work, their own projects, their own brilliant ideas that had actually come from the cleaning lady nobody paid attention to. Finally, Dr. David Chun, the current director of NASA, spoke. Dr. Sullivan, what you're describing is unprecedented. You've been conducting unauthorized engineering work for 40 years. You've accessed secure systems without permission. You've essentially been operating as a shadow engineer inside NASA. I know, Kat said quietly, and I accept whatever consequences come from that. But I needed you to know the truth about the Artemis III. That fuel line fix isn't the only thing that needs my attention. There are 3 other critical issues in the design that nobody else knows about, because I haven't figured out how to introduce the solutions anonymously. If you want that mission to succeed, if you want those astronauts to come home safely, you need my help, officially this time. Michael Foster spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. "Dr. Sullivan, I've been leading the Artemis program for 3 years. Are you telling me that you've been, ghost designing it this entire time?" "About 70% of it, yes," Kat admitted. "The life support redundancy system? That was me. The radiation shielding configuration? Me. The landing leg suspension system that passed stress tests last month? Also me. I left the calculations in Dr. Ramirez's office disguised as his own sketches. Dr. Elena Ramirez, sitting 3 chairs down, looked like she'd been punched. The suspension system, that was my breakthrough. I presented it at a conference. I was promoted because of that design." "It was a good design," Kat said gently. "You refined it beautifully. I just gave you the framework." "But I took credit for it," Elena said, horrified. "I thought it was mine. I thought I'd figured it out." "You did figure it out," Kat insisted. "I just pointed you in the right direction. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I can't build spacecraft anymore. Can't present at conferences, can't take credit. But I can help brilliant engineers like you do those things. I can give you the tools to succeed." Sarah Martinez, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "Dr. Sullivan, that first day I started here 5 years ago, you were cleaning my office. You saw I was struggling with a propulsion calculation. You said something like, 'Have you tried approaching it from the energy transfer angle instead of the momentum angle?' I thought you were just being nice, making conversation. But that comment changed my whole approach. It led to my first major breakthrough." "That was you?" Deliberately, Kat nodded. "You were brilliant, Dr. Martinez. You just needed someone to help you see the problem differently. That's all I've ever done. Help people see differently." James Park suddenly stood up. "Wait. 3 years ago, someone left a note on my desk. It was just a quote from Richard Feynman. What I cannot create, I do not understand. I thought it was random, maybe from a friend, but that note made me completely rethink my approach to the thermal control system. That was you. You were stuck," Kat said. "You kept trying to understand the system instead of building it from scratch. The Feynman quote helped you reset. You designed that thermal control system, James. I just gave you permission to trust your own instincts." Around the table, engineers were having similar realizations. The helpful comment from a cleaning lady, the book left accidentally in the break room that answered a specific question, the equation written on a whiteboard and never erased, the solution that appeared overnight as if by magic. 40 years of ghost engineering, revealed in one stunning confession. David Chin rubbed his temples. "Dr. Sullivan, I need to be clear about something. What you've done it's either the greatest act of dedication in NASA's history or a massive security breach. Possibly both. We're going to need time to process this, to verify your claims, to understand the legal implications." "I understand," Kat said. "But Director Chun, we have 3 months until Artemis III launches. I can document 3 critical issues that need to be addressed before that happens. Issues that I haven't been able to solve anonymously because they require changes to the fundamental architecture. If you want those astronauts to come home alive, we need to start working now. And if we don't," Michael Foster asked. Kat met his eyes steadily. "Then you're launching a mission with a 37% chance of catastrophic failure. I've run the numbers." The room erupted in alarmed voices. David Chen held up a hand for silence. "Dr. Sullivan, you'll need to prove every claim you've made. We'll need your notebooks, your files, your calculations. Everything." "I have everything," Kat said. "Documented meticulously for 40 years. I always knew there might come a day when I'd need to prove what I'd done. Today is that day." Over the next week, NASA conducted the most unusual investigation in its history. Teams of engineers verified Kat's claims, comparing her decades-old notebooks with breakthrough designs that had been credited to others. Her personal files matched perfectly with NASA's official records. Her calculations were flawless. Her ghost designs were everywhere. They found her fingerprints throughout NASA's greatest achievements of the past 40 years. She contributed to the Hubble Space Telescope's repair mission. She'd solved problems with the Mars Curiosity rover. She'd improved the International Space Station's solar panel efficiency. All of it anonymous. All of it invisible. And everything checked out. Every single claim she'd made was verified as accurate. The media got wind of the story by day 3. NASA custodians secretly designed spacecraft for 40 years, the headline screamed. The story went viral globally. A 72-year-old woman who'd swept floors while ghost engineering the future of space exploration? It was the kind of story that captured imaginations worldwide. But at NASA, the story was more complicated. Kat had broken numerous protocols. She'd accessed systems without authorization. She'd operated in the shadows for 4 decades. Legal counsel was deeply concerned about liability issues and security breaches, until the astronauts weighed in. Commander Robert Torres, selected to lead the Artemis III mission, requested a meeting with Kat. They sat in the same conference room where she'd made her confession. But this time it was just the two of them. Dr. Sullivan, Rob said, I need to know something. The life support system you designed, the one keeping my crew alive on the lunar surface, is it safe? It's not just safe, Kat said firmly. It's the safest life support system ever designed for space. Triple redundancy, real-time monitoring, fail-safes built into fail-safes. I designed it imagining you were my son, Commander Torres. I wanted to make absolutely certain you'd come home. Rob was quiet for a moment. Why did you do this? Why spend 40 years hiding, helping in secret, never getting recognition? Kat smiled sadly. When I was young, I thought recognition mattered. I thought credit and acclaim and having my name on patents was important. But after what happened with Blackwood, I realized something. The work matters more than the credit. Getting humans safely into space and back home matters more than having my name in textbooks. I could spend my life fighting for recognition, or I could spend my life actually contributing. I chose contribution. But you deserve recognition, Rob insisted. You were robbed of your career. My career was never robbed, Kat corrected gently. It just looked different than I expected. I've had 50 years of contributing to space exploration. I've helped design systems that explored Mars, fixed telescopes, built space stations, and now will return humans to the moon. That's not a stolen career, Commander. That's a life well spent. Rob shook his head in wonder. I'm going to the moon in 3 months. I'm going to step onto the lunar surface and plant a flag and do experiments and fulfill a dream I've had since I was 8 years old. And I'll be able to do that safely because a 72-year-old woman spent 40 years sweeping floors and secretly designing the spacecraft that will keep me alive. That's, Dr. Sullivan, that's extraordinary. Will you do me a favor? Kat asked, when you're up there, when you're standing on the moon, will you think about all the people whose work made it possible? Not just the engineers with their names on the project, but the technicians and the maintenance workers and the custodians and the cafeteria staff and everyone who contributes in ways big and small? We all put you there, Commander. All of us. I'll do more than think about it, Rob said firmly. I'm going to say it. On the lunar surface. During the broadcast. I'm going to dedicate the mission to Dr. Katherine Sullivan and everyone else who contributed in ways nobody saw. Kat's eyes filled with tears. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, because it's true. The astronaut crew, all 6 members assigned Artemis III, held a press conference. They stood united and announced that they fully supported Dr. Katherine Sullivan, that they trusted her engineering completely, and that they wanted her officially assigned to their mission team. If Dr. Sullivan designed the systems keeping us alive, mission specialist Dr. Lisichin stated, then we want her in mission control when we launch. We want her expertise available if anything goes wrong. We trust her with our lives because she's already proven she values our lives above her own recognition. The public reaction was overwhelming. Social media exploded with support for Kat. Hashtags like hashtag thank you dear Sullivan and hashtag her name on the moon trended globally. Former NASA employees came forward with stories of the kind cleaning lady who'd helped them, who'd offered encouragement, who'd pointed them toward solutions without them realizing they were being guided by a genius. Elena Ramirez, the engineer who'd taken credit for the landing leg suspension system, went public with an emotional statement. I owe my entire career to Dr. Sullivan. The breakthrough I was promoted for, it was her work, given to me freely with no expectation of credit. Instead of being angry at me for taking credit that wasn't mine, she's happy that the design succeeded. That's not just genius engineering. That's a level of character I can only aspire to. Young women in STEM fields adopted Kat as an icon. Here was a woman who'd faced discrimination, fought back in her own way, and contributed at the highest levels without any recognition. She'd chosen a mission over ego, progress over glory, results over credit. NASA faced a decision. They could prosecute Kat for unauthorized access and security breaches, or they could recognize that she just handed them 40 years of free genius-level engineering and acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, the real security breach had been allowing discrimination to push her out in the first place. David Chin called another meeting. This time, Kat was accompanied by a lawyer, though she'd refused to let any legal defense fund pay for representation, instead hiring a young public defender fresh out of law school who reminded her of herself at that age. Dr. Sullivan, David began, "We've completed our investigation. Your claims are verified. Your engineering is sound. Your contributions are undeniable. And we've reached a decision." Kat sat straight, prepared for whatever came next. NASA officially apologizes for the discrimination you faced 50 years ago. The actions of Dr. Richard Blackwood were inexcusable, and management's failure to support you was a profound institutional failure. We cannot undo the past, but we can address the present and future. David pulled out a document. Effective immediately, you're being reinstated as a senior aerospace engineer. Your salary will be adjusted to reflect your experience and contributions, retroactive to 1975, with interest. We're also offering you the position of Chief Engineering Consultant for the Artemis program. We want your name on every design you've contributed to over the past 40 years. We want you in mission control for the launch. And we want you to finally get the recognition you've deserved for 50 years. Kat sat stunned, unable to speak. Michael Foster added, "Dr. Sullivan, we've also reviewed the 3 critical issues you mentioned. You're right. All 3 pose significant risks. We're authorizing immediate redesigns based on your recommendations. The mission won't launch until you personally certify that every system meets your standards." Sarah Martinez spoke up from her seat. "Dr. Sullivan, every engineer in the Artemis program has signed a petition requesting that the lunar lander be officially named to Katherine Sullivan. We want your name on the vehicle that takes humanity back to the moon." Tears streamed down Kat's face. I never wanted recognition. I just wanted to contribute." "You get both now," David said gently. "You've earned both. And Dr. Sullivan, thank you. Thank you for 50 years of dedication. Thank you for never giving up on the mission, even when the institution gave up on you. Thank you for being exactly the kind of person NASA should be celebrating." The meeting ended with a standing ovation. Engineers who'd unknowingly benefited from Kat's ghost work lined up to shake her hand, to thank her, to express amazement and gratitude. But the person Kat wanted to see wasn't in the room. She found Richard Blackwood's contact information in the old employee files. He was 82 now, living in retirement in Florida. Kat called him. "Hello." His voice was elderly, but still carried that same arrogant tone she remembered. "Dr. Blackwood, this is Katherine Sullivan. We worked together in 1975. Silence. Then, "Katherine, I heard about the news. You've been at NASA this whole time." "I have. I wanted you to know that I forgive you." More silence. "You what?" "I forgive you for stealing my work. I forgive you for derailing my career. I forgive you because carrying anger for 50 years would have destroyed me, and I had more important things to do. I had spacecraft to design. Katherine, I'm sorry. I should have apologized decades ago. I was ambitious and cruel, and I stole credit that wasn't mine. You were brilliant, and I was threatened by you, and I dealt with it by taking what you created. It was wrong. Yes, it was. But Blackwood? I won, not because I got revenge, but because I never stopped doing the work. You got promoted on my designs, but I kept designing. You got recognition, but I got results. You have patents with your name on them, but I have spacecraft that will take humans to the moon. So thank you, in a strange way. You taught me that the work matters more than the credit. She hung up and felt a weight lift that she carried for 50 years. The Artemis III launch was scheduled for February 15th, 2025. Kat spent the intervening months working with the engineering team openly for the first time in 4 decades. She fixed the 3 critical issues she'd identified, implemented fail-safes the team hadn't considered, and generally proved beyond any doubt that she was still one of the finest aerospace engineers alive. On launch day, Kat sat in mission control, wearing not a custodian's uniform, but a NASA flight suit with her name embroidered over the heart. Around her sat 3 generations of engineers she'd mentored unknowingly over the years. As the countdown began, Commander Rob Torres' voice came over the radio. Mission Control, this is Artemis III. Before we light this candle, I want to say something. Dr. Katherine Sullivan, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for designing the spacecraft that's about to take us to the moon. Thank you for 40 years of dedication nobody saw. Thank you for proving that the best engineers don't always wear fancy titles. They sometimes push brooms and sweep floors and change the world one anonymous contribution at a time. This mission is for you. Kat covered her face with her hands and wept as the rockets ignited and the spacecraft she designed lifted 6 human beings toward the moon. 3 days later, Rob Torres stood on the lunar surface and spoke words that would be remembered in history. One small step, made possible by one remarkable woman. Dr. Katherine Sullivan, your name is now on the moon where it always belonged. Kat watched from mission control as the astronauts placed a plaque on the lunar surface that read, Katherine Sullivan Lunar Lander, dedicated to all who contribute in ways unseen. After the mission returned safely, after the celebrations and press conferences and accolades, Kat was asked what she'd do with her new position and recognition. Same thing I've always done, she said with a smile. Help brilliant young people reach their potential. Point them toward solutions. Encourage them when they're stuck. Except now I can do it openly. She became a mentor to hundreds of young engineers, particularly young women and people from underrepresented backgrounds. She told them her story not as inspiration porn, but as a realistic account of discrimination, resilience, and choosing your battles. Sometimes, she'd say, the system fails you. You can spend your life fighting the system, or you can spend your life doing the work despite the system. I chose the work, not because fighting wasn't justified, but because I decided the stars were more important than the struggle. Your choice might be different. Both choices are valid. At 73 years old, Dr. Katherine Sullivan received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. At 74, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. At 75, MIT awarded her a Distinguished Alumni Award and asked her to give the commencement address. She told the graduates, Your career will not look like you planned. Life will throw obstacles at you. People will underestimate you. Systems will fail you. But if you truly love the work, if you truly believe in the mission, you'll find a way to contribute. It might not be the way you envisioned. It might be anonymous. It might be invisible. But it will matter. And in the end, the work always matters more than the recognition. Katherine Sullivan swept floors at NASA for 40 years. And in doing so, she swept humanity closer to the stars. Her name now lives on the moon, in the halls of NASA, and in the hearts of everyone who believes that contribution matters more than credit. She'd spent 50 years proving that the person pushing a mop might be the person designing your future. And she'd been right all along.